I'm Margareta Sjölund. I'm the Chief Psychologist for Kandidata Asia, and I'm very pleased to be here today and have the opportunity to ask a couple of questions about this new tool that Dr. Pearman has developed and that we are going to be distributing in Asia. So, are you ready for some of my questions?
Look forward to them.
Good. There are so many personality tools in the market. It's really crowded, and it makes me be very curious. You know, what motivated you to develop yet another one?
Mm-hmm. Well, when I look at the key sort of research trends in personality and the way these different assessments report personality, one of the striking characteristics of all of them is that they present data in a linear fashion. You are not dominant, mildly dominant, average dominant, high dominance, for example. It's very linear.
Yes.
And very discrete elements, you know, degrees of dominance, degrees of sociability, degrees of empathizing, etc. When in fact, there's abundant evidence that really the way personality works is a mixture of processes, intrapsychic sort of patterns, developed responses over time that's enabled a person to be successful. And so the best way to understand personality from my lens is from the view of a system of psychological energies. And I happen to think Jung's framing, energies around perception and energies around judgment, are extraordinarily productive and very manageable in terms of understanding the kinds of things that contribute to patterns that lead to personality as we know it today. There may be some value in knowing where you are on a continuum of how little to how much of an independent variable like sociability. What I suspect, though, is true for most people is that if we start looking at the whole of the person, and that's the reason why I like the word integrator, looking at the whole of a person, there are degrees of using various behaviors which we've labeled things like extroverted thinking or introverted feeling or extroverted sensing, using Jung's language to capture these various patterns that enable a person to realize, oh, there are some resources that maybe I don't use as clearly and distinctly as I could in a more conscious way. So it's not about telling you how much you have or how little you have, as much as it is enabling you to discover the kinds of things you rely on psychologically and perhaps haven't really given much attention to, but could choose to in a more intentional way. So in that sense, it's a very developmental framing. And another component to it which makes it very different is the thread of flexibility that runs through the tool and how flexibility is an essential part of adaptation and development. And so with those kinds of differences, I'm hoping that people will find it an insightful look at their psychology and really an invitation to think about how to use their own resources in ways that perhaps really haven't been on the radar. So it's very developmental and very optimistic in that sense to say there are things that you can use that's likely to enrich your relationships and enrich your sense of success in whatever it is you do.
Well, I really like what you said, that it hits on flexibility and resilience, because it seems like a lot of companies out there are struggling with these concepts, how to measure and how to develop it.
Yeah, that's my experience too. The whole issue of learning how to flex and how to find pathways of rejuvenation are critical in this current economic environment.
Thank you.